You see, one of the most fascinating things about human behavior, and particularly when it comes to avoidance, is how much their sense of security depends on a subtle illusion of control. For years, maybe even decades, an avoidant has been rehearsing the same dance. Keep distance, maintain autonomy, and subtly manipulate situations so that their emotional environment feels safe. They rarely realize it, but every interaction they have is measured against a scale of comfort versus threat. And the truth is, that scale isn't just psychological, it's physiological. Their nervous system has learned to anticipate patterns, and predictability becomes their armor. Now, think about what happens when you stop chasing. For so long, they've counted on you to fill in the gaps, to reassure them without ever having to confront their own vulnerability. Your pursuit isn't just affection. It's a kind of emotional scaffolding that props up their sense of stability. When that stops, the scaffolding collapses. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifts. And for the first time, they are standing in open space without a net. And this is terrifying. Terrifying not because they've lost you in a rational sense, but because their entire internal narrative about control and safety no longer holds. Avoidants are masters at creating distance, and in doing so, they cultivate a perception that they are the ones in control. They can decide when to appear, when to withdraw, when to engage. But here's the paradox. That control is always fragile. It's a control built on avoidance itself. A control that exists only as long as someone else plays their part in the script. When you stop chasing, when you step out of the predictable pattern they rely on, the illusion shatters. They are left facing a truth they are not accustomed to. Life is moving independently of their carefully constructed defenses. And here's the critical point. Panic is almost inevitable at this stage because their brain doesn't differentiate between rational loss and emotional threat. The amygdala, that ancient part of the brain designed to detect danger, lights up in a storm of stress and alarm. Your absence becomes an unconscious signal that the world is no longer predictable, that their sense of safety is no longer guaranteed. This is why you often see sudden attempts at contact, flurries of attention, or even dramatic gestures from someone who has been distant for weeks or months. It's not manipulation in the traditional sense. It's an instinctual, physiological reaction to the collapse of their internal control. Philosophically, there's a deeper lesson here. We often think we control others by our actions, our attention, our energy. But the reality is that true influence comes from stepping out of the predictable patterns, from holding your own center and refusing to be pulled into reactive cycles. When you stop chasing, you aren't punishing anyone. You're simply removing the crutch they have unconsciously relied upon. And in doing so, you create space for genuine clarity. The avoidant, confronted with the absence of your pursuit, is forced to reckon with the limits of their control and the reality of their own emotional state. It's important to note, though, that this isn't about cruelty or detachment for the sake of power. It's about presence and integrity. When you stop chasing, you are not playing a game. You are embodying the principle that your worth and attention are not negotiable commodities. This is a profound statement, not just to the avoidant, but to yourself. You are modeling a standard of respect, self-regulation, and emotional consistency that is magnetic precisely because it is real and non-reactive. And this, in essence, is where transformation begins. The moment the illusion of control breaks is the moment the avoidant is faced with something they can no longer manage or predict. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also a rare opportunity. For the first time, they are seeing a reflection of life that exists outside their avoidance, outside their patterns, and outside their patterns, and outside their safety rituals. Your stillness, your refusal to chase, your maintenance of boundaries. It becomes a mirror, showing them what they have been avoiding all along. Their own vulnerability, their own desire, and the possibility that connection can exist without coercion or pursuit. So the next time you step back, pause or disengage from someone with avoidant tendencies, remember this: you are not withdrawing in weakness, you are allowing the natural consequence of honesty and integrity to unfold. The collapse of their illusion of control is not an ending. It's a signal, a catalyst, and a turning point. And in that space, both clarity and authenticity are waiting to be discovered. Never underestimate the power of absence, because it is in that space that real insight, real reflection, and sometimes real connection begins. If you ever noticed how people react when they are finally forced to confront themselves, really confront themselves, their fears, their desires, the parts of themselves they've spent years hiding, distracting, or avoiding. For the avoidant, this moment comes in the most subtle yet powerful way. When you stop chasing, suddenly the game they've been playing, the careful choreography of distance, disengagement, and emotional safety, falls apart. And what they see in response to your absence isn't just longing, it's a reflection of themselves. That's what I call the mirror effect. The avoidant has spent so much of their life projecting calm, control, and independence. To the world, they appear unshakable. To those close to them, they appear detached. But behind that detachment, there's a deeply trained nervous system, conditioned to anticipate rejection, conflict, or closeness as danger. When you step away, when you stop giving that predictable attention, you are no longer participating in the illusion that keeps them safe. And in that silence, they see something they rarely face, themselves. This mirror effect is fascinating because it doesn't just trigger anxiety, it triggers awareness. When they realize that their usual strategies aren't working, they are confronted with the parts of themselves they've spent years running from: the longing, the desire, the fear of loss, and the need for connection. All of it becomes undeniable. And here's the crucial piece. You are not creating this. You are simply removing the distraction, allowing them to encounter the reflection they have avoided. That's why your presence, or in this case, your intentional absence, becomes a kind of catalyst. Philosophically, there's a deep truth here about human interaction. So much of what we call connection is really a dance of mirrors. We reflect each other's energy, values, and boundaries. But in the avoidant dynamic, the mirrors have always been slightly distorted. They see themselves as invulnerable, independent, emotionally safe, but only because they've structured their world to hide their internal chaos. When you step out of the predictable pattern, you hand them a true mirror, and it can be unsettling. The reflection is sharp, unflinching, and honest. It shows them their own longing, their own unmet needs, and the consequences of emotional avoidance. And this is where things get interesting. Avoidants rarely have the language, the courage, or the capacity to process these reflections consciously. They may react with sudden contact, impulsive gestures, or even attempts to regain attention. But beneath those behaviors is something much deeper: recognition. They are recognizing the reality of their own desire and the reality that it exists independently of their control. This is where panic often arises, because for so long, they've equated safety with distance and control with detachment. Your absence challenges both assumptions at the same time. Now, consider the role of the super empathant in this dynamic. You are not chasing. You are not negotiating for affection. You are simply holding your own space, your own integrity, your own presence. That stillness, that unwavering boundary, acts like a mirror in its purest form. You're reflecting what they are missing, not telling them, not convincing them, not reacting, but simply being the reflection of what true connection, consistency, and emotional safety can feel like. And in seeing that reflection, avoidants are often shocked. They reprain or in this and they, this intensit and doles, I lies often unconsciously that they have wanted something they could never ask for, never allow themselves to feel, and never risk losing until now. And here's the lesson for all of us. The mirror effect is powerful because it bypasses words and logic. It works directly on perception and feeling. It forces confrontation with what has been ignored. For the avoidant, this confrontation can feel destabilizing. For you, it is a demonstration of the power of boundaries, of emotional integrity, and of self-respect. The more you maintain yourself, the clearer and sharper the reflection becomes, and the more authentic any future connection will have to be. So remember this: when you stop chasing, you are not pushing someone away. You are simply holding the mirror up. You are showing them without words the truth they cannot see when you are always within reach. And sometimes that mirror is more powerful than any conversation, any argument, or any gesture. It forces honesty, reflection, and ultimately awakening. The magic of this moment is simple yet profound. When the mirror effect activates, you are not manipulating, you are illuminating, and in that illuminating, the potential for clarity, for growth, and for real connection emerges. Never underestimate the power of reflection, because sometimes the only way someone can truly see themselves is when you step back and let the mirror do its work. One of the most overlooked truths about avoidance is that their reactions are rarely about you. Not really. Not really. When they pull away, when they seem distant, or when they suddenly reach out after weeks of absence, it's easy to assume that these behaviors are calculated, intentional, or manipulative. But the reality is far more complex and far more human. Avoidants don't always act ROM logic. They act from their nervous system. Their mind may try to rationalize, to plan, to protect, but the body, the part of them wired to survive, to detect danger, to avoid vulnerability, reacts first. And that's where the panic begins when you stop chasing. Think about it for a moment. The nervous system is ancient. It doesn't negotiate or debate. It responds. It reacts to perceived threats with precision, immediacy, and often disproportionate intensity. For an avoidant, emotional closeness has long been associated with potential pain. Even in relationships where you have shown patience, love, and understanding, their nervous system carries the memory of all past rejections, all past betrayals, and all past moments of unprotected exposure. When you disengage, even for a brief moment, the system interprets it as a threat. The pattern isn't, I'm losing them because they chose to leave. In the conscious mind, it's danger, loss, vulnerability, and the body reacts before thought catches up. Why? This is why you often see avoidance suddenly contacting you with intensity, or acting in ways that seem impulsive, inconsistent, or even illogical. They are not planning a strategy. They are responding to an internal alarm system that has been set for decades. Their heart rate spikes, their cortisol levels rise, their mind floods with anxiety and urgency. In short, their body is screaming for safety long before their conscious mind can formulate a rational response, and this is why traditional logic, argument, or reasoning often fails. You cannot reason someone out of a physiological response. You can only give space for it to move, for it to resolve, for it to process. Philosophically, this reveals something profound about human behavior. Our actions are not always the product of deliberate choice. Much of what we perceive as control is actually reaction. Much of what we interpret as coldness, indifference, or calculated distancing is really a survival mechanism, and when you stop chasing, you are not changing their mind. You are activating a system that has been dormant under the illusion of predictability. The body reacts first, and the mind scrambles to catch up. This is the nervous system at work, and it is far more honest than logic ever could be. This is also where your role becomes critical. Your absence is not a punishment. It is a mirror, a boundary, a demonstration of self-respect. But to them, it feels like danger. And here's the beauty of it. When you maintain your calm, when you hold your ground without reacting to their panic, you are giving their nervous system the opportunity to do what it rarely gets to do: reset. When you chase, when you over-explain, when you respond impulsively, you reinforce the you feed the alarm system. But when you step back, when you hold your integrity, their nervous system is forced to navigate reality without the familiar crutch. And in that navigation, clarity emerges. This is also why avoidants often surprise themselves in these moments. They may feel a surge of urgency to reach out, a compulsion to reconnect, or even a sudden flood of emotion that feels foreign and destabilizing. It is not strategy. It is biology. And understanding this is empowering, not just for them, but for you. It allows you to interpret their behavior without personalizing it, without taking it as a reflection of your value, without feeling manipulated. It is a lesson in detachment, presence, and the power of boundaries. The nervous system does not lie. It reveals truth long before the mind can label it. And when you stop chasing, you are not creating chaos. You are simply holding space for the authentic reaction to occur. You are allowing the panic, the recognition, and eventually the self-reflection to surface. It is uncomfortable for both of you, but it is also essential. So remember this, avoidants do not react from logic. They react from survival, from instinct, from the body's deep need to feel safe. When you step away, you are not rejecting, punishing, or controlling. You are giving the system a mirror, a space, and an opportunity to realign. And in that realignment, the potential for authentic connection, if it ever comes, will be grounded in awareness rather than avoidance. Calm presence in the face of their panic is not passive. It is a demonstration of power, clarity, and integrity. And that ultimately is far more transformative than chasing ever could be. One of the most fascinating and often overlooked dynamics in the avoidance super M path relationship is how much avoidance rely on predictable patterns of attention for emotional stability. It's not always conscious. In fact, most avoidants would deny it if you asked them, but there's a quiet underlying truth. The validation they receive from others, the subtle nods, the attention, the pursuit is a form of emotional scaffolding. It reassures them that the world is safe, that connection is possible, that their careful boundaries are working. And when you stop chasing, that familiar rhythm disappears. The effect can be profound, disorienting, even alarming. Think about it for a moment. Validation is not inherently bad. We all seek it to some degree, but for the avoidant, it becomes a crutch. They've trained themselves to rely on others' predictable responses to maintain their own sense of security. When you are consistently present, when you respond, when you chase, when your attention is available, they don't have to confront the inner tension they usually suppress. The pattern itself provides comfort. It tells them without words that everything is under control. But stop chasing. Step back. Hold your boundaries. And suddenly, that invisible support structure is gone. What follows is not a calm, measured assessment of reality. It's anxiety. Their mind begins to race. Did I push them away? Did I misstep? Are they losing interest? Do I have to act now? Their nervous system kicks in because predictability has been disrupted. What once felt safe now feels uncertain, and uncertainty is the very thing they have spent their life avoiding. This is the paradox of avoidance. Their desire for autonomy is inseparable from a desire for safety, yet the strategies they use to create that safety, distance, control, emotional disengagement, only work when someone else plays the expected role. The instant you remove yourself from that script, the illusion shatters. And what emerges is not just anxiety, it's panic, a sudden awareness that the world and the connection they have relied on is not as predictable as they thought. Philosophically, this touches on a larger truth about human behavior. So often, we confuse external validation with internal security. We measure worth by others' attention, affection, or reactions. Avoidants have mastered the art of controlling that exchange. They limit access, they create distance, they appear independent, but the foundation of their emotional life is still built on the reactions of others. Remove those reactions, and the structure trembles. What's critical to understand here is that this anxiety is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's a biological and psychological response telling them that their habitual coping strategies are insufficient. It's an invitation for awareness, for reflection, for potential growth. And this is key, the growth only happens if you maintain your boundaries. If you chase, if you reassure, if you insert yourself into their panic, you are effectively patching the structure again. You are giving them the familiar rhythm, and the lesson is lost. This is why super empaths have such power in these dynamics. By holding steady, by refusing to participate in the predictable exchange, you allow the avoidant to fully experience the consequences of their own patterns. They feel the absence of validation as anxiety because they have been sheltered from confronting their own needs and fears. Your stillness doesn't just challenge them, it catalyzes the very self-awareness they have been avoiding.
It's uncomfortable, yes, but discomfort is the precursor to insight. It's also a less so.
In for us all. Human beings grow not through comfort alone, but through tension. We grow when familiar structures are challenged, when we are forced to confront reality without crutches. By stepping back, By removing the predictable validation, you are creating space for real understanding, for authentic recognition of emotional patterns, for a chance at connection that is rooted in honesty rather than habit. So the next time you hesitate to pull back because you fear the avoidant will disappear or react negatively, remember this. The loss they experience is not a reflection of your cruelty. It's a reflection of their reliance on external scaffolding for internal security. Your presence or absence is the catalyst that allows them to confront that reality. Your calm, consistent boundary is not punishment. It is clarity. And clarity, even when it comes with discomfort, is far more powerful than any pursuit. Because when anxiety arises from the loss of familiar validation, it is signaling a profound truth. They are finally seeing the limits of their patterns, and the path towards authentic engagement is now open. There's a certain power in calm. There's a certain power in calm. Not loud, not forceful, not demanding, but calm. And in the world of avoidance, this calm is magnetic. Avoidants are wired to flee emotional intensity, to run from vulnerability, and to rely on patterns of control and distance to feel safe. But when they encounter someone who does not chase, who does not react impulsively, who maintains presence without attachment to their reaction, that's when everything shifts. This is the moment super empaths hold power, not through manipulation, not through strategy, but simply through their mastery of themselves. Think about it. The avoidant has spent years, often decades, crafting strategies, often decades, crafting strategies. All maintain safety. They've mastered withdrawal, distraction, avoidance. They've trained themselves to scan the emotional landscape constantly, to measure threat and comfort with near constant precision. But the super empath is a paradox to them. You are present, yet you are untouchable. You are compassionate, yet you are unwavering. You reflect understanding, yet you do not give yourself away to their panic. And this is profoundly destabilizing for someone who has structured their world around predictability and control. This is not about ego or power in the conventional sense. It's about presence and integrity. You hold yourself in such a way that your value cannot be bargained for or chased after. And when you do that, something remarkable happens. The avoidant panics. They feel the pull of desire and the fear of loss simultaneously, and they cannot reconcile it with their habitual scripts. The dance of pursuit and retreat, the pattern they've relied on, is interrupted. And in that interruption, they are forced to confront a reality they have long avoided. They cannot control your attention, and yet they deeply want it. Philosophically, this touches on a profound truth about human connection. True influence does not come from trying to fix, manipulate, or chase. It comes from being whole, being centered, and being unwavering. The super empath embodies a principle. Your emotional integrity is your power. You do not need to bend, plead, or negotiate for someone's presence. Your calm, measured energy creates a field that the avoidant cannot ignore because it challenges the very system they have relied on for safety. And here's the subtle brilliance of it. You do not need to act. You do not need to strategize. Your power comes simply from maintaining clarity, boundaries, and presence. This is why super empaths are rare and so effective in these dynamics. Most people, when faced with withdrawal or distance, will chase, explain, or negotiate. They will try to repair the pattern rather than step into discomfort. But the super empath understands that true influence is rooted in stillness. You are the immovable center in a world of reactive motion. And in that stillness, the avoidance panic becomes inevitable because their familiar patterns no longer suffice. It's also important to recognize that this power carries responsibility. Super empaths do not wield it to control or punish. They wield it to illuminate, to catalyze awareness, and to create space for authentic choice. You are not pushing someone into introspection. They are being drawn to it by the natural consequences of your integrity. Your calm is not a weapon. It is a mirror, a demonstration of what is possible when one is fully present without compromise. Consider what this teaches about relationships, influence, and human behavior. People are drawn not to those who chase, plead, or bend to their anxieties, but to those who hold themselves steady. Stability, clarity, and self-respect are magnetic. And in the avoidant dynamic, these qualities are transformative because they bypass manipulation, bypass strategy, and speak directly to the nervous system, the very system that has been driving their avoidance for years. Your calm becomes a guidepost, a signal that connection can exist without coercion, that presence can exist without coercion, that presence can exist without chaos, and that intimacy does not require abandonment of self. So the next time you feel the pull to explain, to chase, or to react to an avoidant sudden attention, remember this: your power lies not in their reaction, but in your own integrity. Ren value is not contingent on them, but on your consistency, your boundaries, and your presence. By holding yourself in this way, you shift the dynamic entirely. You create space for panic to surface, reflection to occur, and eventually the potential for authentic connection to emerge on terms that honor both parties. And that ultimately is the power of the super empath. It is not loud. It is not forceful. It is not coercive. It is calm, it is centered, and it is unwavering. And in that calm, the avoidant realizes something profound. What they have been chasing for so long was never control. It was connection. And for the first time, they see it mirrored, not through pursuit, but through presence. One of the most profound truths in human connection is that transformation rarely happens in noise. It doesn't happen in the chase, in the explanations, in the constant negotiation for attention. True transformation, especially for someone with avoidant tendencies, happens in silence. And when you stop chasing, when you step back and hold your boundaries without apology or compromise, you create that silence, a space where real change can occur. It is in this quiet, in this stillness, that the avoidant is finally forced to confront themselves and the consequences of their patterns. Think about it. For years, an avoidant has been running from discomfort, from vulnerability, from the intensity of their own emotions. They have mastered avoidance to such a degree that their nervous system, their mind, and even their body have been conditioned to prioritize distance over depth. And yet, when you disengage, not in anger, not in manipulation, but in calm, purposeful absence, you create a mirror. That mirror does not demand anything. It does not judge. It does not negotiate. It simply reflects reality back to them. In that reflection, they see what they have been avoiding, their fear of avoiding, their fear of intimacy, their longing for connection, their need for honesty, and their own emotional truth. This silence is uncomfortable, yes. It is disorienting, even alarming. The patterns that once provided safety suddenly collapse. The predictable rhythm of pursuit and withdrawal that allowed them to manage their emotions is gone. And in that vacuum, panic can emerge. But panic, as unsettling as it is the first step toward awareness. It forces them to reckon with themselves in a way that words or persuasion never could. Your silence becomes a catalyst for reflection, self-examination, and ultimately, transformation. Philosophically, there is a lesson here about human growth. Change does not occur when we are clinging to someone or something, nor does it happen when we are being told what to do or how to feel. Change happens when we are faced with the consequences of our own choices. When you stop chasing, you are not punishing the avoidant. You are simply allowing the natural outcome of their behavior to emerge. You are holding the space for them to experience the reality of their avoidance, the consequences of their disengagement, and the truth of what connection requires. The super empath understands this dynamic intuitively. They know that the moment of silence, the refusal to participate in the habitual dance of pursuit and withdrawal, is more powerful than any argument, explanation, or plea. It is a demonstration of integrity, presence, and self-respect. And because the avoidant has rarely or never been confronted with this level of authenticity, the impact is profound. The panic that arises is not just about losing someone. It is about recognizing that the pattern, ends they have relied upon, are insufficient for real connection. And here's the subtle brilliance of this process. The silence does not need to be filled. You do not need to chase. You do not need to negotiate. You do not need to explain. Your calm, unwavering presence in your own life sends a message more powerful than words ever could. It says, I am whole, I am valuable, I am not dependent on your validation. But the opportunity for authentic connection exists if you are willing to meet me there. And that is transformative, not manipulative. It is catalytic, not coercive. There is also a universal principle at work here. Growth and transformation are inseparable from discomfort. Just as muscles only strengthen under resistance, and as clarity only emerges when distractions are removed, emotional and relational growth only occurs when habitual patterns are challenged. Your silence is that challenged. Your silence is that challenged. It is the environment in which insight, accountability, and self-reflection can thrive. And it is in this environment that the avoidant has the chance to confront not just their feelings about you, but their relationship to connection, intimacy, and vulnerability itself. So as you step back, as you hold your boundaries and embrace the stillness, understand the power of what is happening. You are not withdrawing in anger or fear. You are creating space for profound change. You are allowing the avoidant to meet themselves in a way they rarely get to. And in that meeting, the seeds of transformation are planted. It may not happen immediately. It may not happen predictably, but the opportunity is there, and it is real, and it is enduring. The lesson is clear. Silence is not absence. Silence is presence on a deeper level. Silence is integrity. Silence is the crucible in which avoidance can be confronted, reflection can take place, and authentic growth can emerge. And in this silence, both parties, if they are willing, can step into a space of awareness, clarity, and connection that is real, lasting, and transformative. So hold your stillness, respect your boundaries, allow the silence to do its work, because true transformation is rarely loud, but it is always powerful. So let's step back and see the full picture. When you stop chasing, when you hold your boundaries, when you refuse to engage in the predictable dance of pursuit and retreat, something extraordinary happens. You break the illusion of control that the avoidant has relied on for years. You hold up a mirror that reflects their deepest fears, desires, and unmet needs. You activate the raw, honest reaction of their nervous system, showing them, without words, what it means to truly confront vulnerability. You remove the scaffolding of familiar validation, creating a vacuum that forces reflection and self-awareness. You wield the quiet power of the super empathets, embodying presence, integrity, and calm in a way that cannot be ignored. And ultimately, you create the silence, the sacred space where real transformation becomes possible. This is not about manipulation. This is not about punishment. This is about clarity, authenticity, and respect, both for yourself and for the other person. By stepping back, you allow reality to speak. You allow consequences to unfold. You allow reflection to emerge. And in that reflection, awareness is born. The avoidant may panic. They may scramble. They may attempt to regain control. But here's the key. Their panic they live in is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to hold your presence, maintain your integrity, and remain unwavering in your value. This is where true power lies. Not in chasing, not in pleading, not in controlling, but in standing firm, in being whole, in being the reflection of the stability, authenticity, and love that they cannot manufacture within themselves. And the beauty of this process is that it teaches a universal truth about connection. Real relationships are not built on pursuit or control. They are built on integrity, mutual respect, and the courage to face our own fears without avoidance. When you stop chasing, you are not pushing someone away. You are giving them the only thing that can change them, the mirror of reality and the opportunity to step into their own emotional growth. So take a deep breath and remember this: your value is inherent, not contingent. Your attention is precious, not disposable. And your boundaries are not barriers. They are beacons. They illuminate the path toward clarity, self-awareness, and authentic connection. The avoidant may panic, they may resist, they may struggle, but in that struggle lies possibility. And if they are willing to meet it, the transformation that emerges is real, lasting, and profound. Hold your stillness, respect your space, trust the process, because in the end, the greatest lessons, the deepest growth, and the truest connections always arise not from chasing, but from standing firm, being whole, and allowing silence to do its powerful transformative work. And that, my friends, is where freedom, clarity, and authentic connection begin.